to The Art of Adventure. This is episode 195 with adventurer extraordinaire Sean Conway. The Art of Adventure is a podcast that helps you travel the world, run your business, and embark on an epic quest. I'm your host, lead explorer, and guide, Derek Loudermilk. Before we get into today's episode, I want to talk about courage. Courage is the hallmark of the adventurer and the entrepreneur. So I'd love to invite you to come on Adventure Quest in Bali in April 20 to 27th. This retreat is an adventure and business retreat that's going to focus specifically on your courage and acting big as an entrepreneur. Courage allows you to stay the course. It allows you to embrace the struggle. It allows you to overcome obstacles. This is the key to long-term high performance as an entrepreneur. So I'd love for you to check out the trip details. You can find them at derekloudermilk.com/adventurequest. So today, Sean Conway is on the show. How many British redheaded adventurers can I get on this podcast? We've had Dave Cornthwaite on the show, Alistair Humphreys, you're next. But Sean Conway, he is an adventurer of the year. He is a world record holder for the longest triathlon. And he has done many, many more physical challenges, including cycling speed record attempts for cycling around the globe and cycling across Europe. So he's a badass. He's one of the most well-known adventurers in the world right now. And we are going to hear some pretty cool inside stories about the time that he took a quick detour to Ireland as he was swimming the length of Britain. We get into how he funds his adventures. They don't cost as much as you might think. And how he creates his own events. He's not an Olympian, but he does have Olympians that help him with advice and training tips. So he creates his own event and then goes and wins it. I also ask him on a personal note, as someone who goes on lots of adventures, I want to be able to use those stories to help people and form a business around adventure. And I know that Sean does a lot of speaking where he tells his adventure stories. So we get into just how to translate an epic tale that you've gone on an adventure into a useful paid speaking gig. I know you're going to love this episode. I'm so excited to finally have Sean on. So without further ado, here is the one and only Sean Conway. Welcome back to The Art of Adventure, and I'm joined today by Sean Conway. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Good evening, good afternoon, and good night, everyone. Hello.
And first of all, your accent is not purely British. Where does it come from?
I'm a bit of a mongrel. I am your classic mongrel. I was born in Zimbabwe in Africa. I grew up in South Africa, but I have English and Irish family. So I have an Irish passport, but I live in England at the moment in the Lake District. So yeah, a bit of everything.
And do you live on a boat?
You know what? I did live on a boat. I used to live on an old World War II gunboat, which I bought 4 years ago now, and spent 4 years doing it up. Yeah, it was amazing. I loved it. I loved boat life. But then, recently moved to the Lake District for training. And I tried to get the boat up here. I tried everything, but the boat was too big and a bit too old. So sadly, I'm now in bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
Soul destroying, man. So I'm trying to, weirdly, I was even on eBay today trying to find a new project nearer to where I live.
Oh, funny.
But yeah, I've sold out, man. I'm in a house. Sold out. Judge me.
So our mutual friend, Dave Cornthwaite, who's been on the show, another British adventurer, he lives on a boat now. And I came across at some point when you were talking about swimming the length of Britain, where he was swimming the Mississippi and then sort of that helped put the thought in your mind about swimming Britain. And I see this whole community of British adventurers.
Most of us are ginger as well.
Why do you suppose there's this sort of clan of, there's the Royal Geographic Society, which has been going on for centuries, right? But why do you suppose right now there's such a British adventure group going?
Well, it just goes way back. The adventure exploration scene in the UK has been, is centuries old. It's because we live on a tiny island, and I think we just want to get off it sometimes. I mean, I don't know why, because if anyone's been to Britain, it is the best island in the world. I love it. It's there's so much going on here, but it is also still a small, wet island in the Atlantic Ocean, and British people for the most part are quite inquisitive, and they want to explore, and it's just the way it's in our culture, I guess. So, my family left Britain, England and Ireland, and went down to Africa 100 years ago, and that was just kind of a normal thing, catch a ferry to Africa. And it's just kind of, it's in our pedigree to go off and want to explore places, a bit like the Norwegians as well. They're pretty good at exploring. And yeah, just from way back, you grow up reading about all these explorers, and you're told how amazing they were and are, and all the amazing things they've done. So as a kid, it certainly fuels your imagination to try and replicate it. Although, truthfully, there's no way we can replicate adventures of yesteryear. We're all soft nowadays, aren't we?
I hope not. What's the interplay like with the other adventurers, for those of us that aren't in the UK? How often are you guys hanging out and scheming up big plans?
Well, it depends what you're into. I'm into solo stuff. Dave's into solo stuff. He's done a few things with other people, but we're all supporting each other. We're all mates, actually. I've been to Dave's boat a few times. He's came to my boat, and we just hang out and we talk to each other, about what we got planned next and all that sort of thing. So it's actually just quite, one big happy family. But there is obviously a competitive element. We're all trying to do things. Especially any sports person, you're trying to win. You're trying to be the best at your game, your discipline, as it were. So there is that competitive element, which is fun. It's healthy. It's got to be. Otherwise, you just wouldn't push yourself, really.
Yeah. Right now, I'm playing a game with my girlfriend where we just earn points for doing things in life that we want to try to get better at.
Nice.
So the end of the day, we just tally up the points and see how we're going in the game.
A great idea, man. I like it. I'm going to use that as if it's my own.
Good. I've heard you say, and I've just watched a bunch of YouTube videos of you and your adventures, but I've heard you say adventure is a frame of mind, and you talked about how it was in your family heritage and in the English heritage in general. What is that frame of mind? How do you think about adventure?
Oh yeah, I've said it all along. Adventure isn't all about rowing oceans and climbing mountains. I think, I know adventure in its purest form. Like if you break it down, it's just a way of thinking. That's all it is. Adventure is just a way of thinking, and you don't have to go and climb a big mountain. You can be adventurous in everyday life, whether it's choosing what restaurant to eat at, choosing where to go for the weekend. All those things you can add adventure to. You can even, you don't have to be all these big things. It's just what you do with your mind and make it adventurous, I think. And that's what I think one of the most important sort of things in life is to actively try and add adventure to your everyday existence. Otherwise, I think you get a bit bored, and then boredom leads to being miserable. So
yeah. Have you seen, so say someone has, a full-time job and a family and all kinds of things, and they feel like they've got a lot of responsibilities. What have you seen to be interesting ways to add adventure to, a packed life like that?
Well, I'm probably not the guy to ask these questions to. There's a guy called Alistair Humphreys who he famously has coined the concept and philosophy around a micro adventure, which now, people have heard that phrase, but, he certainly was the person to start making that more mainstream. You don't have to quit your job. You may have, as Al says, you may have a 9 to 5, but you also got 5 to 9. And, people always forget there's 24 hours in a day. And if you're clever, you can balance 8 hours work, 8 hours sleep, 8 hours play in a 24-hour period, And whenever I tell people that, they go, oh, that maths doesn't work. And then you go, no, actually, it does work, mate. That's the problem is, we all want bigger houses and fancier cars. So we end up working more than we need to, and they're not having enough playtime. and that sort of thing. So, there's loads, you just walk up a hill, sleep on a hill, sleep under the stars, Another great book, actually, is by a guy called Tobias Muse, who wrote a book called Go, where he just comes up with loads of crazy ideas. Like, in Britain, every town in Britain is twinned with a town in Europe somewhere. So he called it extreme twinning, where you go from your town to the town that's twinned with yours, which, you could probably cycle that in a couple of days, depending. If you're unlucky, it's on the other side of France, and then it's a bit further. But, there's so much you can do. I mean, Everesting, people sort of, that's hardcore there. If you want to walk up and down some stairs until you've reached the height of Everest.
Oh, right.
A friend of mine climbed a rope until he had done the height of Everest. A guy called Ross Edgley. Amazing. Yeah, that was mad. Just up and down, up a rope, and then he slid down again. Yeah, until he had gone the height of Everest. That's mad. Anyway,
wow.
He also ran a marathon pulling a mini and did a triathlon carrying a tree.
These
are the guys triathlon. Yeah, that's right. That's what he called it. These are the guys I'm up against in my world. It's all a bit bonkers, but it's all fun,
Oh wow, I love it. So you've achieved some pretty remarkable feats, but I follow you on Instagram, and I saw you were attempting the world record crossing of Europe, but then you pulled a quad or had some sort of injury. Yeah.
I mean, injury's tough for me. In the world of adventure, or whatever you call it, you've got exploration on the one side, where you just wander around and explore and probably discover things and maybe do a bit of science or geology or whatever. On the one side, and on the other side is the athleticism side, the sports side of adventure. The endurance racing, the 3 Fs, the holy grail in endurance sport really is if you can break a world's first, a world's furthest, and a world's fastest. You've got the 3 Fs, which is the holy grail, and that's my end. So that end is the end that where you get injured, it's game over. Whereas if you're exploring, you get injured, you wait a couple of weeks, it's all good. It doesn't really affect the overall outcome of of the reason you've gone off and done it, which is hard, because I'm 37. I don't bounce back as much as I used to. Although I'm still young, I'm still getting fitter. I'm just kind of pushing a bit harder. So yeah, sadly, I was 4 days in, really, pretty early on. And just it wasn't even a bad injury, to be honest. It was just a little niggle, but it was enough to stop me from doing the big miles. And I needed to do the big miles to break the record. So, yeah, threw the towel in on that one. And had to obviously go home and rest. And by the time I'd recovered, I couldn't do it again in the season. It would have been too cold and wet. So I'm going to have another crack at it, either next summer or when I feel fit enough again one day. Who knows?
Yeah. So did you try to negotiate with yourself when you were deciding whether to stop? You were like, I think I could go. What was going on inside you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it took about 2 days for me to decide, because I kind of thought, right, is it a proper injury? Maybe not. Maybe I'm tight. Maybe it's just a niggle. I can ride it out. But so I spent a whole day riding and only did 100 miles because I just had no power. So I rested up and I thought, well, maybe tomorrow it'll be okay, and then tried again, and it was even worse. And then, by that time, I'd lost probably 50, 60 miles on the record, which is really hard to get back, to claw that sort of miles back. And then I rested up again second night, and I just knew that actually it was getting kind of worse rather than getting better. So the only thing that would have helped me is recovery. And I've had something similar before, and I knew the recovery was only about 5 or 6 days, truthfully. But you can't 5 days and you've lost the record. Even 2 days you've lost the record. Now, if it was near the end of the ride, if I was 4 days from the end, I'd probably have just overdosed on paracetamol, winged it and dealt with the injury. But when I was so early on, it's not worth the long-term risk.
Yeah. And you said now you're in the Lakes District training. Is it secret? What are you training for?
I got a couple of. I got loads of ideas, man. I got a book of ideas, and it's just and my problem is just deciding which one I want to do. So I'm training for some stuff coming up, which is top secret as always. But I'm still, this European record is niggling me, man. I've failed twice now at a world's fastest. I attempted the round the world cycle record in 2012. Fastest person cycle around the planet, failed at that, and now I failed at the across Europe cycle record. And which is annoying is I've got two of the other Fs. I've done a world's first and I've done a world's furthest. So this third, the fastest, would be, would mean I'd get the triple F crown. I'd get the Holy Grail in endurance adventure. And it's just eluding me, man. And I'm not getting any younger.
How do you think about failure, for example, the around the world or this one? Is it just something that happens, or what's the lingering?
For me, almost without a doubt, every time I failed at something I can usually pinpoint it back to me not preparing in some way or form. I could have probably, the reasons I failed are probably, if I'd done a little bit more research or a little bit more training or a little bit more something or other, would have maybe stopped me from failing. You know what they say, if you fail to prepare to fail. But there's certain things you just can't, you can't stop. I failed on my round the world bike ride because I got run over in America. But
America.
I was, but actually I had great experiences of cycling in America. Most of the drivers would give me loads of space. They were friendly. I was getting given food and directions. It was amazing. I just got unlucky. All it takes is one guy. It was late at night, and in my fault is I was on a pretty bad road. I was on a road you'd probably never cycle on, but I was just following a yellow line on a map. Like every other road I'd been on, and you never know. But had I maybe gone on to Google Street View to see the quality of the road, that would have helped. I should have done that, but I didn't do that. So that's, again, a bit my fault. But it's difficult to do that every single time and every single day and every single mile. When you're doing 18,000 miles, it's kind of impossible, really. So
yeah, a lot of preparation.
Yeah, but you take it in your stride, and it's heartbreaking failure, especially when you put so much into it. But you got to take something from it. You got to learn, and I've learned to now check roads from satellite view to see if there's a hard shoulder in preparation, to prepare my route a little bit better, and just bloody do yoga. I need to do yoga, man.
Just to strengthen for the injury.
Myself. Yeah, for injury, just because I'm getting older now, so it becomes more important to do that when you're old man like me.
I think you're about 2 years older than me, so I guess we're all getting older. Speaking of nighttime, I was imagining your swim up the length of England, and how you had to sometimes start in the middle of the night to go with the tides. And swimming at night is a little spooky.
The first time I did it, it was not fun, to be honest, because there's loads of jellyfish out as well at the same time. So I just kept getting stung in the face by jellyfish, and they're the big ones, man. They're like the size of footballs with 3-meter tentacles. They're called lion's mane jellyfish. But I just had to do it. You had to do it. There's some. If I didn't swim like night sessions, I wouldn't complete the swim. And once you've come to terms with that, you just got to deal with it. It's either that or quit. Really, it was freaky because it's just so dark, especially when there's no moon or anything. And I've got earplugs in, so I can't really hear much. So I'm in my own little weird headspace, and I have a wild imagination. And I just kept thinking of all the creepy crawlies lurking beneath me.
I know, right? I've done some night scuba diving, and you have a beam of light, and then things just swim into your beam of light, and you're like, how big is this thing going to be?
Exactly.
Wow.
Never mind. That's a vibe.
You were talking in one of your videos about the experience with the phosphorescence, and
oh man,
that's got to be such a amazing phenomenon to experience.
Yeah, I mean, and it was like you see in the movies, like in The Beach when Leonardo DiCaprio is playing in the water, or in Life of Pi when the whale comes out of the water. It was almost like that. I'd just put my hand in the water and open it, and there'd be an explosion of light, or like a foot around my hand, and I'd look down and I'd kick my feet, and there would just be like thousands and millions of little phosphorescence everywhere. But then, then my wild imagination kicked in, and I just kept swimming, thinking, if I see a streak of phosphorescence like dart underneath me, 50 meters below, I'm gonna lose bowels. It's not gonna end well for my wetsuit there. So, yeah. So as amazing as it was, I just pictured the scene of seeing a trail of phosphorescence below me and wondering what it may be.
Yeah, I'm wondering about. I've talked to a lot of adventurers and solo travelers who develop connection with their environment and with the animals, and they really just tap into this sort of primeval connection with the natural world. And I'm wondering if you've experienced anything like that.
Well, I mean, I almost grew gills, I guess, on the swim. Yeah, I didn't see that much wildlife, but I guess you become more in tune with nature and everything when you go off and do these things. Yeah, it's always like that, but I was hoping to see more wildlife. I swam with seals and dolphins, and you certainly feel as if they're going to be your friend, but inevitably they just want to come and get some food off you or something.
Well, so when you're out there on the bike or swimming or whatever, all by yourself, you have thought loops that are going around in your head, or what's going on inside your mind?
Food. Where am I going to eat the next meal? Yeah, no, I try not to overthink stuff. I kind of get into what I call sort of like hibernation mode. And because if you overthink it, things get stressful and you cause yourself stress. So I break it down. I break each day or each session down to what I'm doing to the next headland or the next town. What am I going to do? I'm constantly working out the basics, like calories, stretching. There's 5 elements I need to keep on top of my game. And that's food, water, sleep, muscle management, and the 5th one is motivation. If you drop any of those, if all 4, even if one of those isn't running at optimum, your mileage is going to be down and your record will be jeopardized. So, you can have good food, good water, good sleep, good muscle management, but if you've got no motivation, man, you're going nowhere. And it's the same. You can have all the motivation in the world, but if you're not eating enough, your mileage will be down. So, I'm trying to always balance those 5 things, practically and make sure that I'm operating really well and fast and can push the miles and recover well and all that sort of thing. So that takes up a lot of my thought process. I presume, the people who do a little bit more exploring, they're a bit further down the scale in adventure, get more time to let their thoughts dwell, and they can probably do a better job at curing world peace and all that than I can with all the extra brain space they have. But I really don't have much brain space at the time to do anything other than think about those 5 key elements, really. I mean, even at points I tell my family not to message me, just so that I can just be focused.
Yeah. So 4 of those are physical, yeah. And then motivation is the more interesting one. So how do you manage motivation? Assuming you want to just keep it up, is it simply just a matter of will?
It's a difficult one because, it all depends on your progress. If you're doing well and you're ahead of the record, your motivation's pretty high. If you've eaten well, if you've slept well, the other 4 will help motivation too, to an extent. But you've got to keep your core goal in the forefront of your mind. Like, why are you doing this? And that's personal. You may be wanting to raise money for charity. You may be wanting to just break a world record. You may be wanting to, find out what you're truly capable of. Each to their own, whatever the reason is, there's no right or wrong answer. So you got to keep that in the forefront of your mind, and that keeps you going. And for me, I guess the thing I kind of think, what else would you be doing? If you weren't doing this, what are your other options in life? And for me, all the other options are far more scary and daunting than, being a bit miserable and cold and hungry and grumpy, so that kind of keeps me going.
Interesting. Yeah. I always wonder, people that have achieved amazing things, when they sit down to do something really, really hard, and what do they tell themselves? Like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And halfway through, when you're, maybe you're faced with a failure point and you move past it, Like, what is the self-talk that happens?
Yeah. You just got to learn from it, You got to learn, it's difficult. There's no, I did this time, I do that the next time. It just depends what mood you're in, depends how things pan out. I tend to not dwell on stuff. I'm quite good at moving on. If things don't work out, I kind of move on, sit down, realize how I could have made them work out, and then keep going. Move on to the next project, or work out how to do that project again better and faster.
Always faster.
Yeah.
So people always want to know, how do you make a living off this? What's the business model?
The business model, I don't know. Is there models business? I don't really know. Yes, of course. We all need a certain amount of money to survive on this planet, to buy food and shelter and warmth. Do you know what I kind of got loads of help from, weirdly, Olympians, actual, professional sports people who kind of do a similar thing, but they just have a pre-designed event like the Olympics and the World Champs to go to. My only difference is I have to think of my own event and then win at it. So, but if it's too easy, no one can be bothered. If it's too hard, you don't win. So you got to find a balance, right? But yeah, I mean, from a practical point of view, firstly, I come up with an idea. With any luck, I'll get some funding from sponsors. And this is getting harder to get sort of big funding nowadays, like it was in the early days. But there's more companies willing to put little bits of small funding in so that they can be associated with the project and get some social media reach.
And by early days, do you mean when you started, like in 2011?
Oh, yeah. So sort of 10 years ago, and that, you could, brands it would take longer, but they would probably put a bit, quite a big chunk of money towards a big project. When I cycled around the world, I had one company fund me the whole amount, whereas nowadays when you ask for that sort of money, marketing's got a lot cheaper for brands, with social media and everything, they can get a lot more out of their marketing for that. So, they might go, well, actually, why am I going to put, 30, 40 grand towards it when actually, we can do a lot more ourselves type thing.
Yeah.
Saying that, of course, there are companies that will put that sort of money towards some stuff. A solo individual event, a little bit harder. They'd probably put it towards, televised group events potentially when it's the big stuff. But you know what? I don't need the big stuff. Like, I don't really. Most of my adventures are pretty cheap. Probably £5,000 is what most of them have cost. The Round the World was a little bit more expensive, and Swimming Britain was a bit more expensive as well. But generally, I try and get sponsorship, like most sports people. The sponsorship game and sport go hand in hand, really. So I'll do that, and that'll cover my costs pretty much. I won't make anything out of that. I will go off and do what I need to do the adventure. With any luck, I break the record, and then if that happens, life gets a little bit easier because, hopefully I could get a book out of it and sell a few copies at talks and things like that. And also maybe do some, as I said, talks around to the corporate side of things. So those three really are the way I'm able to sort of fund my life and get by. But, I also lived on a World War II gunboat that I bought for £2,000 4 years ago. So, I've chosen to live more cheaply,
Sure.
rather than trying to earn more to satisfy a certain way of life. I became time rich and cash poor. That's a much better way to live life, I think, which allows you to go off and find purpose in what you want to do rather than forcing you to do stuff you don't want to do,
Yes. And then we just need to get cash rich and time rich.
Oh, it just gives, without fail, man, like the more money you earn, the more choice it gives you. And often too much choice leads to depression, man. Honestly, like, how many times, when you've got so much choice, you don't know what to do and you land up not doing anything properly because you just flitter because you have all the choice. Then, you go to parts of the world where people don't have that much choice, and 9 times out of 10 they're happier, really. Yes, of course, there's
Interesting.
There's a lot of people around the world who are unhappy, who are cash poor. Yes, I appreciate that. But certainly from my experience, that it seems the people who are less or who have less money are often happier because they lead a simpler life,
Interesting.
I'm certainly happier. I was certainly much happier having much less money doing what I loved rather than having loads of money doing something I hated. 100%, without doubt.
Good. Yeah. What do your corporate audiences find most useful when you speak to them about your adventures?
Yeah, so the corporate side want to just tie in keywords, really. They want to tie in things like resilience and thinking big and not giving up and when chips are down, stick at it if it's the right thing, but also know when things aren't right for you, and that sort of thing. So, but mainly because a lot of the stuff I've done is just been long and hard, and there were months and months where I could have given up but didn't, and the rewards at the end are so much more for not having given up than if you had given up, and and that sort of thing. So that's generally one they want to hear about. But I'm quite lucky because they don't actually want to be preached at. Most of my speaking events, they just want to hear how I did it. They're generally interested, like, how did you swim 900 miles up the coast of Britain? And they can take what they want from it. I find audiences now are much more intelligent and in tune with their own thoughts and the world and what they want to get out of the world and that sort of thing. And it's great because it makes my job easier. It means I don't have to sort of force feed some philosophy down their throat. I can just tell my story and how I did it. And most audiences are pretty intelligent to take away what they want from it, which is great, because it means I don't have to specifically think of one message. I can tell my story, and it's great because people email me after and they're like, oh wow, because of your thing, I've decided to run a 5K in the park on the weekend. So they took the physical side out of it. I'll have someone else completely different email and say, because of you, you know what, I've decided to take up the guitar because I always thought I couldn't play the guitar, but now I really feel if you can swim Britain, man, I can definitely learn the guitar. So they've just taken the kind of I can do anything out of it. And other people say, I've decided to change my diet, man, because I really want to get fitter and healthier. So I'm focusing on my eating now. So it's great. People are intelligent enough to take what they want, which I love. I love that variety.
Yeah, brilliant. Sean, I've got one final question for you.
Okay.
If you could change or add anything to the world, what would you want the world to have?
Confidence, but not arrogance. I think it's the one thing I see the most lacking in many people, and it's the one thing stopping people doing what they want to do is confidence. So if I could wave my magic wand and make, especially kids, especially youngsters nowadays, I think a lot of them aren't that confident. They're reading the news, it's all doom and gloom everywhere. They're not getting jobs, they'll never be able to afford a house, all this sort of thing, and they're lacking confidence, man. They're lacking it. I think if I could go, right, boom, here, here's confidence for you as a youngster. And then hopefully that'll lead forward. But I don't want it to be arrogance. There's that fine line. You can, if you're so confident you become arrogant, then that's not beneficial to anyone. But sort of internal confidence is something I wish that we all had, because you would then believe you could go off and do anything. And there's so much stuff would happen in the world. People would, how many people probably could have cured many, many problems, but didn't really have the confidence to pursue that earlier on in life and things. So, yeah, that'd be my one thing, I reckon.
I love it. And just out of curiosity, when you want to wave your magic wand on yourself to boost your confidence, what do you do?
You know what? I'm quite practical about it. I write lists. I love my lists, man. I write lists about everything. So if I'm feeling not super confident about something, I kind of I'll write a list, and I'll be like, right, why am I not feeling confident? What are the pros? What are the cons? What do I need to do? What can I do? What can't I do? What help am I going to need from other people? Because you want to surround yourself by good people, right? Find those people. And then once it's actually written down on a piece of paper, I'm very visual. I visualize everything in my wild imagination. But having it on a piece of paper certainly helps. And once I've got all that down, I kind of feel less overwhelmed by something I'm not super confident about. And then hopefully I'm able to achieve that, which has worked for many, many things, except learning the ukulele, man. We are not friends. Me and the ukulele. I don't know why, man, but I lost all my confidence there. And I just can't play anything.
That's funny. That's funny. You're out of your element a little bit.
Totally, man. I can't sing as well, so that was annoying.
Well, Sean, where can people find you online?
Yeah. Where Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Forgotten my handles because they all changed recently because I had to change them. But I think if you just search my name on those 3 places, and I'll be there somewhere. I'll be the ginger hairy guy, so you won't miss me.
Brilliant. Sean, I want to acknowledge you for being a role model for so many people attempting to do challenging things in their own lives. Really appreciate that you're out there trying these adventures. So thanks.
I hope. And I guess my one message for people is, is if you've got something in the back of your mind, just start it now, no matter how small, just start doing it now, whether it's a hobby, learning an instrument, learning a language, traveling, exploring, trying to do a marathon, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Don't wait. Start like now, whether it's, drawing a map or writing a list or whatever it is, just start now, and that, it'll slowly snowball, and before you know it, you'll be like, wow, this is totally doable, man. So that'll be my message for everyone. If you've got a big idea, no matter what it is, just start now. Don't wait, because you'll only regret it. Brilliant.
Love it. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Sean.
Cool. Thanks very much, guys. Catch you later.
All right. Bye-bye. Amazing interview with Sean. What a badass. If you learned anything or if you were inspired by this interview, I know Sean would appreciate a shout out. You can find him on Twitter, Instagram. He's got a lot of cool stuff going on Instagram, so check that out and let him know what adventures he inspired for you to go on. And if you want to get more adventure and you're an entrepreneur, this is a plug for Adventure Quest. I created Adventure Quest to bring entrepreneurs out into the wilderness to have epic adventures because I know that it unlocks greatness. I know that it unlocks bravery and courage and lets you think outside the box. And there's so many amazing analogies. We're going canyoning, we're going surfing, we're going to find flow, we're going to jump off cliffs, we're going to do things that you've never done before so that you can do things you've never done before in your business. Check out DerekLaudermilk.com/AdventureQuest and let's have a conversation to see if it's right for you. Thanks so much for listening to this interview today. Now it's your turn to go out there and be adventurous.